This episode is brought to you by CBS All Access. If you don't already subscribe to CBS All Access, please use our affiliate link by going to talkthroughmedia.com/CBS. Using our affiliate link gives us a little credit, which helps us to keep bringing you great content. U.S. residents only. Hello, and welcome to episode 4 of the Star Trek Lower Decks podcast. I'm Brian.
And I'm Kyle.
And tonight we will be covering season 1, episode 4 of Star Trek Lower Decks, titled Moist Vessel. There's something about calling it Moist Vessel that just makes
a word that I think a lot of people have like kind of an issue with.
Mm-hmm. All right. Before we get started with our main episode, let us discuss the previous episode where we got a little more feedback for season 1, episode 3, titled Temporal Edict. Let's open hailing frequencies. All right. So our first thing is a voicemail from Fred from the Netherlands.
Hello, Brian and Kyle. This is Fred from the Netherlands with some feedback for Star Trek Lower Decks Season 1, Episode 3. There were actually 2 storylines I found a little bit too long, although only in an episode of 22-23 minutes. On one side, the Calrakian story took me a little bit too long, and also the story of the buffer time. The idea was okay, but it took a little bit too long, and resolving it was a little bit in an overshoot modus. Cannot imagine that the captain would let everything loose. But within this story, the way Boimler behaved was quite in contrast, and that was nice. Most interesting, I found the interaction between Commander Jack Ransom and Ensign Mariner. First, who was going to fight that big Calrakian guy, and then how Ensign Mariner was impressed how Jack did succeed in getting that guy down. She could be a bit interested in him, and then the question is this going to be a big contrast to Ensign Boimler, who is, well, let's say the weak, nerdy guy? Could Ensign Mariner get interested in Jack Ransom, and Boimler will get kind of jealous or something like that? Okay, that was all for now. Sorry giving my straightforward opinion, but there are more people like that.
Permission to speak freely?
You always speak freely. Nobody can stop you from speaking freely.
All right.
Greetings, all the best, Fred from the Netherlands.
I guess Fred has his own version.
Yeah. I not that I was always like on par with like when you guys were recording for Discovery, but like I didn't know he had outros.
No, he didn't. Normally, like everybody else, he has.
Yeah.
And I don't want to cheat him of that, so he's got 2 pieces of music this time. So anyway, thank you so much, Fred. He had gotten this feedback in after we recorded on Saturday night, but before we got the episode out. So I told him, well, it's too late to put it in. And, I basically churned the 2 episodes out back to back. As soon as I was finished with the one, I started working on the other. So anyway, I told him it was going to wait, so it did. But anyway, thanks, Fred, for that. Oh, we always appreciate your feedback, and hope everything is good in the Netherlands. Hopefully, things are starting to return to normal. I don't think they're returned to normal here, but
yeah. I mean, I do have to say though, it's like I get what he said about Boimler. and it was, it was just like, and with like just kind of that episode, but I feel like this episode kind of cleared up a little bit more about the Boilermaker Mariner kind of thing going on.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like that was kind of like some of my reactions from last week. So
cool. Okay, so we got another little bit of feedback actually as part of his feedback for this week's episode, and that is LT from NC. So talking about last week, he says, sorry for missing the deadline last week, but I was busy with work stuff until way later than usual. That's okay, LT. I was pretty busy last week as well. So just as a catch-up, Temporal Edict gets a 9.1 out of 10 shirtless ransoms. Every episode has gotten better, and I really like this one. They canonized buffer time and made me laugh a lot. Love the Commander Ransom Captain Morgan poses. The Wood jokes, and after surviving the away mission, throws Mariner in the brig for not rolling her sleeves down. Since you guys already talked about it, I won't wax long, but you guys hit the big points on the podcast. Plus, we all knew Miles O'Brien was the most important guy in Starfleet history. Of course he was.
Yes.
Yes. For those of you that are on Facebook, there is a page called The Same Photo of Chief O'Brien Every Day. And it literally is the same picture of Chief O'Brien every day. And it has some other caption that's related to it. And, so he'll say something, but it's always this picture of Chief O'Brien behind a blue background, and he's got his hands on his hips, and he's smiling, of course. So yesterday's was everyone's brave until a console explodes in their face. which by the way, I haven't seen them use that trope yet.
Not yet.
I haven't seen any exploding consoles.
Well, wait, when they did episode 2 was like doing the different, like, trying to find his note, like do a different job to impress Tendi, and then they were like, oh, here's the bridge, like, simulation, and then it was like everything exploded and everybody's face is covered in blood.
Maybe okay, well, maybe that was
I guess that was the only thing.
Yeah, maybe that was the take on that.
Yeah.
But in any battle, they even did it in Discovery, the exploding consoles, like on Enterprise in the middle of the battle of the season finale of season 2, there were exploding consoles on the bridge of the Enterprise. It's just, always has to happen. But anyway, so just for those of you that love Chief O'Brien, go to that page. It's always gives me a smile when I go to it. All right, so let's get into this episode, season 1, episode 4, as we called it's Moist Vessel. Written by Ann Kim, an executive story editor on Star Trek Lower Decks. Directed by Barry J. Kelly, who also directed season 1, episode 1. And I think his title is something like Post Supervising Director, I think. That may be not exactly correct, but it's something like that. I'm saying it that way so that I don't have to correct myself. But anyway, it's something similar to that, if not that. The description from CBS.com, Captain Freeman seeks the ultimate payback after Mariner blatantly disrespects her in front of the crew. A well-meaning Tendi accidentally messes up a lieutenant's attempt at spiritual ascension and tries to make it right. It's TVPG with violence, with an air date of August 26th, 2020. The time, it was sometime between 2:06 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time and 2:12 Eastern Daylight Time, because at 2:06 it wasn't there, and at 2:12 it was. So like 11:06 to 11:12 is when it came out. So it's on the 26th, according to them, but 27th on the East Coast. It has a runtime of 25 minutes and 48 seconds. Kyle, what did you think of this episode?
Well, actually, I enjoy this a lot more. I give it an 8 Carols out of 10. Whatever, Carol.
This one, I had given the last 3 episodes 9s. I didn't like this one as much, I hate to say. There were some things about it I just didn't care for. So I'm going to give this one a 7 out of 10. You like me, you really like me's, or not to call her a helicopter mom, but I am going to call her 7 runabout moms out of 10.
Oh gosh. Okay, you
Yeah.
totally took. You win that one because I thought the same thing. I was like, oh, I should call her helicopter mom or like something like that. But
Yeah.
Robot
Well,
mom.
a helicopter mom is a Carol, and of course her name is Carol. I wonder if they did that intentionally. Although I don't know if when they were coming up with this series, I don't know if Carol was a thing yet.
Yeah,
Because that's a relatively new term, and poor.
Well, right, and I wonder if though.
Actually, you know what? I'm getting that all wrong. It's not Carol is the term.
No,
it's Karen.
It's Karen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Okay.
I think the whole Carol and like just being like, oh, it's mom, and it's like call your mom by your first name when she's like, I thought that's kind of where it came from, and so maybe it just Karen.
Yeah, Carol's Karen's sister. So, all right, let's give the listener ratings. You do 2, and I'll do 2.
All right. Well, Edwin from Arizona gave it a 9.5 out of 10 ranking pens. Aaron from Akron gave it a 10 out of 10 bleeps on the bleeping holodeck.
LT from NC says, I'm giving Moist Vessel, I keep saying it Chekhov style. Moist Wessel, I guess. 9.2 out of 10. Why is the koala smiling? Lastly, Wes from Minnesota says, this was good. Really. The end with Tendi putting Rutherford in an arm lock, demanding she know who doesn't like her on the ship was hilarious. I give it 9.75 sensors out of 10 easily. Seems like I was the only one that didn't like this one. Maybe I need to do a third watch. I don't know. All right, so let's move on to our yeses.
Yes!
All right. Well, Edwin from Arizona, his yes was less of Bolomir yelling and whining. Yeah. Aaron from Akron, his yes is from learning just how dysfunctional the relationship Ensign Beckett has with her mom. Yeah.
Yeah, it is pretty dysfunctional. That's for sure. Wes from Minnesota, he has 3. He says the sarcastic Vulcan salute and Freeman telling Mariner, don't you dare give me that sarcastic Vulcan salute. Even Boimler did it. Yeah, and she got a kick out of it. You don't make it cool. And then she's like, oh, I made it cool. Tendi trying so hard to help the crew member, she ruined his ascension. And Mariner making note of Admiral Vassery and Captain Freeman saying sensors instead of sensors. And I might as well say it now. I was going to put this in the spot the references section, but sensors is a reference to Spock saying sensors. That's how he said it on the original series, and you can even hear him say it in the movies when he was on Next Generation for that special episode, and even Spock on Discovery said the same way, sensors. So anyway, all right, Kyle, what do you have for your yeses?
Well, I mean, I guess like it was just the whole so basically the whole episode was basically Mariner not wanting to do her job, which we now find it's like, okay, yeah, the captain obviously is her mom and just trying to get her, I guess, get rid of her or whatever. But it was like the whole ploy was like, oh, but let's give her, basically put her onto like the senior, like being a senior officer. And I thought it was really funny that it was like all the things that a senior officer does. And they, like she'd be like, hey, Mariner, come to the, the deck to do, it was like command prep for mission audit. And then she gets there. It's like, oh yeah, after that, you get to audit more audits. And like executive poker, And like, I thought it was really funny. There's like, they're just playing the game, but everybody folds, and she's just like, whatever, I don't care about this. Like, I totally give up. I lost. It's like, no, it's like, this is like, that's not how this is. It's a friendly game. It was just the whole making fun of the whole kind of what we're used to in that sense of like the TNG, Voyager. It's like the senior officers have their duties, but then we also see their kind of like they're off, like, like down, maybe not downtime, but just like we see them in a more like human element where it's like, hey, they're the senior officers. Of course, they're going to play like pool, or they're going to play poker and this and that. But then it was just like this whole play off all that. I don't know. I just love that whole interaction. It's just like, this is what's going to make Mariner just like want to quit, or at least they think that that's what she wants. And I don't know. I thought it was a really fun little play on everything that we know. Like, we've seen so many Next Generation, like the poker games with Data and like, Crusher and, Captain Picard and Riker. And like, they have those like really important human interactions in those settings because they're the top and they're having that human element, and that's what brought that part of the show in. And this is being kind of turned around to being like, this is the most annoying, worst thing I don't want to be a part of. I want to be down goofing off in the lower decks.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I liked it.
I was struggling to find a yes for this, and I may come up with something later, but I mean, in general, I guess the episode, but there were a lot of things about this episode that just annoyed me. I don't know why. Maybe it was just the mood I was in, but when I went to watch it just, before we started tonight, I was hoping that I would find something, but I didn't really find it. So, I mean, don't get me wrong. I didn't hate the episode. I enjoyed it. I didn't like it as much as the previous three. So
yeah,
there's something specific that annoyed me in the episode, and we'll get to it, and that'll explain it. So let's get to our no's.
No!
Go ahead.
All right. Our first no comes from Edwin from Arizona, and he said, my no is, I didn't care much for the guy trying to seek Nirvana payoff when not that good could have left out.
Yeah, that whole thing was a little strange, and that was part of what I didn't like about the thing. And I don't even think I had that in my notes, but I didn't like the ascension thing, and I'm very confused why he ascended. Like, how was that even possible? What made him ascend? Okay,
right.
So there you go. We got right to the heart of it. That was my number one problem with this episode. It's like, how the hell did that guy ascend? What made that happen? Did
right.
he just accidentally ascend because he was going through these things and, just like randomly tripped on ascension and his ascension aspirations? Or because, he wasn't like, and I've got this listed in my references, so this is my second steal from the references. John Doe, I think they called him, in Transfigurations from the TNG episode, season 3, episode 25, also known as the episode before Best of Both Worlds. That's how I always remember the episode.
Yeah.
There's very little that I'll remember about that episode until it comes up, until I go, oh, the episode before Best of Both Worlds. Oh, okay, I remember that. But anyway, there was nothing like that. It was nothing like he was human. So there's no history of humans ascending into something. So yeah. I had a problem with that. I just that whole thing. It's just that's part of the story, or the end of that story with him ascending. I didn't get it. I didn't understand how it happened. I didn't understand why it happened. Is he dead? Is he on some other plane? Is he still around? Is he still a life form? What is he? I don't know. I don't like that. I don't know. This is probably worth 2 out of the 3 points that I took off. Even though it's not in my notes because I didn't write it in because I wasn't thinking of it. But this is 2 of the 3 points. So
yeah, and I it's hitting on my no too. But I'm like, Aaron from Akron, His no was like, for instance, Beckett being so immature that she can't put her personal feelings aside to be a great commanding officer. She clearly has the chops, but would rather be sick or stick it to her mom.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
That's the third out of the 3 points I took off. So yeah, that whole story, I didn't buy the thing of Beckett intentionally yawning. Like, just I can't. I
didn't understand that at all.
No, I don't see it. I don't see her doing that like to an admiral. I don't care if she's a slacker or whatever. I just don't buy this. I don't buy that. Why would they keep her in Starfleet if she's got such a crappy attitude? You know,
right.
Like, okay, so she's got, good skills. Send her on, let her go work with, well, this is in the future, obviously, but because at the time he's probably serving on the Ibn Majid in Picard, serve with Chris Rios on the Ibn Majid. Sorry, not the Ibn Majid, the ship he has, the La Serena. Get on some merchant ship or whatever or work with Cassidy Yates or something. Like, it just, I don't know. I just have problems with her being so wanton with disrespect, especially the way she did in this episode. It stretched beyond my ability to buy it,
Yeah, I know. I agree.
Yeah. So anyway, those are my 3 points, but I have another point too.
We have Wes from Minnesota.
Yeah. Wes from Minnesota says none. Well, I disagree, Wes. This was pretty good. Can't find any faults. Well, I've already talked about 2 of my faults, but I actually have more faults. So somehow I must have bonus. There must have been bonus points because I've already deducted my 3, but I have something else to deduct. So, all right. What do you have?
Yeah, well, I have to go back and just agree with Aaron because, like, the beginning of it, when Mariner was like immediately be just like, "Oh, I'm yawning. Oh, this is so boring." Blah blah blah. I was just like, "Wait a minute." I'm like, "What?" Like, none of that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm like, why would you even be in that room if you're just like, I'm going to be blatantly just disrespectful and like whatever. It's like it totally kind of brought you out of everything, and it's like, this makes no sense. Like she's kind of being like a dick, like she's told her mom. But then at the end of it, it's like, okay, well, that made a little more sense because mom and her had that connection and like whatever. And then it's like they almost could have just left that out and like done something differently and not just like try to push that right at the beginning. And then at the end, it would have made a little bit more sense and maybe been a little bit more tolerable. And so, then it was just like the beginning. I was pissed. I actually kind of think I wrote, and she's like, why is she being such a disrespectful, like horrible person? Like, why would they even let her be there? So yeah, I don't know, that it rubbed me off the wrong way.
Yeah.
But then
by the way, and it's not listed, but the Admiral Vassery, it sounded like Kelsey Grammer. I mean, I don't know if it was, and there's no listing. I was checking Memory Alpha to see if it was listed. It sounded like Kelsey Grammer a little bit.
Huh.
I thought.
I guess. Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
But
I mean, well, I don't know. I'd have to, check to see that. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they just left that off just for fun, but
yeah,
it should be in the credits.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll just go into my no, and it was just like, I kind of agree with some of you. It's like the Tendies whole arc. Yeah. That whole thing made zero sense to me. And like, I don't know. It was like for one, it was kind of like, I kept feeling like that's like they're trying to make her into the Tilly, which
kind of,
like Tilly, like, but there was like kind of, we were brought into her whole being quirky and like what her story and her background and all this other stuff was. And I kept feeling that kind of interaction or just like that kind of thought. But then it went to such a extreme, which I think this show is like a very, like they take things to the ultimate extreme.
Yeah.
And I think Tendy's character, I don't understand. She basically murdered a guy in my sense. And then she was like, "Oh, but it doesn't really matter. Who cares?" But it was like the whole interaction and her whole story, everything that happened in this episode, it was just like, I do not even get it. And I didn't care because I wanted to see basically Mariner, Mom, and, Bolomir and just like all the other stuff. And this
You're never going to get that pronounced right, but
no, I'm not. Bolomir, whatever.
Boimler.
Boimler. Yes, just like sensors. But
okay.
Yeah, I just like I felt like it was just kind of like filler, and I kind of was like, I don't even care about this. I just want to see everything else, and so I'm kind of not liking her whole little character, but I'm sure she'll pop in and do something in the future. We'll see.
I like her. I don't really like this like needy, you must like me kind of thing. I mean, that kind of character's been done to death. I mean, I don't know necessarily on Star Trek, although I want to say, like in different ways, like Neelix reminds me of that a little bit.
Well, and like you could even say Troy.
Ezri Dax would be another one.
Oh, well, that might be one.
Tilly, like you said, Tilly would be another, but,
Yeah. But like that's the thing. It's like they're pushing it to such an extreme that it almost kind of just like it just kind of like it just turns me off because like there's no reason why at the end of the whole episode she's grabbing what's his face God, I gotta start Rutherford.
O'Connor?
No, Rutherford grabbing him by the arm in his bunk and just like twisting her arm because at the end she's just like, "Oh my gosh, no, I don't care about everybody. He's like hating me." And then he's like, "Oh yeah, there's probably a few." And then she's like, "Oh, but what? A few?" And then it was like that was like the end scene. It was like she's basically trying to rip his arm off, and it was like, I just don't really get it or care. It was just kind of stupid.
Yeah.
All right, go on.
Well, so I had 3 that we haven't talked about yet. I had a lot of trouble with the idea that the terraforming compound could get all over the ship and they could reverse it so easily. I mean, obviously they still have to pull into a starbase to completely reverse it, but that's the whole thing where it kind of gets reset because it looked like there was some severe damage to both ships, and for it just to go back to normal, I don't buy it. I mean, at least the Merced was severely damaged beyond, I guess, like, I don't know about beyond repair, but it was definitely more damaged than the Cerritos was. But nevertheless, considering the amount of damage that was done, I just didn't buy the fact that the Cerritos could so quickly go back to normal.
Yeah, I agree.
I also, like we talked about the disrespect in the cold open in the last act. I didn't buy the fact that, and this is, I guess,
the nitpicking Brian says, you promoted Ensign Mariner from ensign to Lieutenant Mariner and skipped Lieutenant Junior Grade Mariner.
So, okay, so went up 2. I don't really buy that. I don't, like, the only example I could remember of something like that would have been Tom Paris. Tom Paris went down from a lieutenant to I think he was a full lieutenant to an ensign and then back up to a lieutenant. I could be wrong, and I still have to go back and do my Voyager rewatch, so I could be wrong. So if you're going to correct me, if you think, Brian, you're wrong, that's fine. You can correct me, but nevertheless, in this episode, keeping it,
consistent to this episode,
I don't know why. Maybe that was just an animation, a drawing error that they didn't specify lieutenant junior grade. So I could buy that, but making her a lieutenant full grade would get her into senior staff meetings where I think a lieutenant junior grade would not. So, I mean, it makes sense based on that. But yeah, that was the one problem. And then the last thing that I had to put in my nose, Durango, which I have something about Captain Durango in the next section. Durango taking the Merced out of position just so he could get the credit for bringing in the ship. I thought ego like that was not supposed to be that much of a thing in the 21st century. Well, okay, maybe. I guess we have seen that somewhat, but I didn't like that. It feels like, again, these like lower grade ships trying to curry favor, trying to get noticed so that they get better captaincies on better ships to me. And I don't know, I just had a little bit of problem buying it, but of the ones that I had problems with, this was the one I had the least problem. All in all, I mean, I brought up several things and I brought up no yeses. It's not that I didn't like the episode. It's just that you guys brought up the things that I liked. So there was a lot to like. I had some nitpicks, some things I didn't like about it. All right, let's go into our not good enoughs.
Not good enough, damn it! Not good enough!
We have one. It's from Wes from Minnesota. He says, Mariner getting it's related. Mariner getting promoted to lieutenant and causing jealousy in Boimler. I would have loved to have seen more of that jealousy.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree with that. And it was kind of goofy just to make him turn him into this,
oh, want to see me break the rules?
So
yeah. Well,
you have something related to that.
Yeah, that basically goes right into my not good enough. It was because it's Boromir not getting any time to really break the rules. He was saying, it's like, oh, the whole episode is him like, why is she getting all these special, like, this is like, that's what he dreams to be. That's his passion. And then it was like, oh, okay. Well, then we see that he's like, well, so it's just like she breaks the rules. So maybe that's how I get noticed and this and that. And then it was like the only thing we saw out of that whole time was just him spilling coffee on Ransom's lap or like his lap. It was like, that was it. I would have loved to see him try to be breaking the rules and kind of failing and being like learning from it and be like, oh, but like, okay, that wasn't the right thing. What she did somehow, she got away with it. But when I do it, it doesn't work. But we got literally one little 2-second thing and that was it. And I kind of felt though the other part of that too is like Boimler. I don't know. I'm phonetically just sounding his name out. Boimler, that's the thing. It's like the episodes, like we see Mariner and we know that that's the captain's her mom. And so we know that already ahead of time. And so we're seeing the interaction between her and mom. And that makes sense that she's just like, I want to get rid of my daughter. I'm going to try to do these things. She won't do it. They kind of have their little heart to heart. We end up seeing the end of this story in the episode. But then Boimler is like, he's not privy to that information. And then it was like, I don't know. I feel like this was just like a really weird missed kind of thing. He doesn't know that she's her mom.
Yeah.
It's like, he's just like, she's just kind of my alter, or my nemesis that I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to impress because I want to be Starfleet. And so it just, to me, it was just like, they have so much there that they could really do something with. And just so far that we've got, it's like, it's a huge missed opportunity because otherwise it's just like, then Boimler doesn't matter at all because then it's just about her, Mariner and her mom. And that's all that mattered this episode. Boimler just kind of was like, hey, I'm trying to do something. And it just, I don't know. It just a huge disconnect to me.
Well, and they still haven't really explained or revealed to the lower decks that she is the mother.
Right.
The captain's the mother of Mariner. And we pretty much know that they don't know. Because otherwise,
right,
Boimler would be acting much differently, I think. But it seems to me there's a whole thing. And I'm going to start with that now that I think about it. So I don't have this on my not good enoughs. But okay, could you not consider that to be nepotism?
Yeah.
That whole 2 pips thing, or a full pip versus a half pip, her getting promoted like that seems like a little bit of nepotism. So anyway, obviously it didn't last that long, but I had one thing about O'Connor, but we've already talked about that. The other 2 that I have are, why does a turbo lift in the 24th century need lubing? It seems to me that it wouldn't need lubing. Like, there'd be technology that would make lubing a turbo lift not necessary. I don't know, like some kind of like, what do you call it?
Well,
Magnetic, or, some
like
other
thing that doesn't need like anything that has to actually use like kind of lubricant.
Yeah.
I just thought it was funny because it's like, yes, even though in the 24th or 25th or 24th century, where it's like, this is like this still the same thing, that it's like, that's why we have to keep like calling people to come fix our air conditionings, because like we probably have the technology that this could be something that never ever has to be fixed. It could always be going on, this and that, but it gives a job to people that like will, like be able to service that technology.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, to me, I was just like, I mean, when I saw basically I'm just replying to your comment. It was just like, yeah, it's just kind of like that joking thing. It's like, well, yeah, it's like, it's a turbo lift, it's an elevator.
Yeah.
It probably doesn't need it, but that's what they use to like make the lower deck have to do it.
Right. Well, that's true. The other thing that I had an issue with is this Captain Durango is a Tellarite, yet his name is Durango. I thought that was odd. He doesn't have a Tellarite name. His name is Durango. So it was just a weird naming. Maybe in the credits, or when they recorded it or written it, they didn't like specify him as Tellarite. Maybe as they drew it, they thought, oh, let's put a Tellarite in this position. I don't know. But anyway, that was a strange name. I would have given him a Tellarite name. But anyway. All right. So let's move on and open hailing frequencies for our feedback section. All right. So our first bit of feedback is another voicemail from Jeff, X-Force 11 from North Carolina.
Hello, Star Trek fans. It's Jeff, X-Force 11 with my feedback for STLD Moist Vessel. So, some interesting little tidbits that I enjoyed in this episode. I enjoyed that even though we are a cashless society, there is privilege to rank as far as replicators go. So the officers, the senior officers, get better replicator recipes and things like that. So that's very interesting. I thought it was very cool how we got to see mom and daughter kind of putting grudges beside, but then getting right back at it. So Mariner is just one of those characters that's going to be interesting to watch through this series and to see how she grows and develops. It seems like it really needs to be on her terms rather than her mom's, and nothing's going to stop that. All right, those are my thoughts. X-Force 11 is out.
Nice. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you so much, Jeff, X-Force 11, for your good feedback. And you brought up a couple of good points there. So moving on to those points, it is cashless, but we have privileges like ranks to replicators. And, even at the end, the fact that Mariner got the good, access to the, senior officers lounge, whatever, and that was coveted. So yeah, it seems that way. Maybe the replicators that the ensigns get serve stuff from Dollar Tree or something.
Basically they don't have the same options, and then it's like senior staff gets like, oh yeah, yes, you can have like, I think Boimler, just it's like macaroni and cheese with the crusty stuff on stuff.
Yeah, it'll be like, give me a nice corned beef on
Yeah.
pastrami, corned beef and pastrami sandwich on on rye, and you order it and it comes out bologna sandwich. It's like,
I'm assuming that's
Yeah.
that's kind of what it is.
yeah,
It's
so that's probably, I could see that. It seems a little cruel, like if you got replicators, but then again, it makes sense to a certain degree, because I imagine that you would have to keep those recipes on file somewhere, and that would mean some kind of storage. So maybe the replicators in the junior officers access don't have as many recipes. I don't know, but it also seems to me like they could get the recipes. It shouldn't be that difficult,
right.
but
We've seen instances where it's like, okay, in Voyager they had replicator rations because they were trying to save energy. And, it's like, it's kind of that thing where it's like, okay, but to actually kind of have some reference that was like, oh, because of your rank, you would be limited to what you could actually do. I mean, the replicator is supposed to be like, oh, this thing can just make whatever you want. And I'm like, I want a steak dinner every single night. And so maybe it isn't that way, but we've never seen that. So it's kind of like, I get to where it's like, that's kind of putting in this, even in this episode, it was like, yeah, lower decks and like people under senior staff are going to be less than senior staff. It's like, so maybe that's just kind of like the whole deal. But
it's also a way for, they're like, this will be controversial for some, I imagine, but communism, I guess. Like if there's no way to have any kind of ambition, then there's no reason to better yourself, right? So like you take all that out and you don't have any reason to become better. You know what I mean? So I guess it makes sense to a certain extent, I think. Not to make it all about, capitalism versus communism, but
Well,
in a
I mean,
post-capitalist society, there has to be some kind of way of getting
like a reward.
Yeah, getting a reward. Yeah.
Like a reward for your your status and you to do better.
Yeah.
I mean, like this can go totally, it's like that's kind of the deal, because you'd be like, oh yeah, it's like, well, you can like throw the whole Hunger Games deal. It's like, well, that's a different kind of system, because that's oppression.
Right.
Not like, oh, like you're trying, you're like, you get paid more when you get a promotion. Right. That's to basically you're getting value for the work that you're doing. That's kind of the same way, not like, oh, like, yeah, the oppression part of it, which, I'm sure that's the way it is.
Right. Also, the mom and daughter stuff, you mentioned that.
Yeah, no. The mom and daughter stuff, I kind of agree with. I feel like, though, that was kind of more of the point of this episode than with Tendi and all the other stuff that was going on, and why Boimler didn't get a much bigger kind of screen time, and almost kind of Tendi got too much.
Yeah.
But I that was one of the good things about this episode. We actually got to see Mariner and her mom actually interact and kind of have we obviously know they have a relationship. This is kind of almost kind of like the Burnham and Spock and what we saw in Discovery, where it's just having those interactions with it's with the family part of it. It's we know that Mariner, that's her mom, and we don't understand why she wants her off the ship, but then this whole episode was all kind of revolved around that, and that to me was kind of the point of the whole episode. And all the other stuff, Tendi and Boimler and all that stuff, even though I think he should have had a bigger role, to me, I'm I really liked seeing that connection, and we're seeing that develop.
Yeah, I would agree.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that it's on her terms, we definitely see that. I'm still trying to understand why those terms are the way that they are. But we definitely did see in this episode the things that she doesn't like about command. And I assume from that, maybe has been a lieutenant before. And as a result, maybe thought it was boring. I mean, she was obviously bored to tears. And we saw that in this episode, definitely. But so we see that. However, there's a lot, I think, that's part of being in command that I think would be very rewarding. And for whatever reason, she's not seeing that yet. So I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
You know what it is, I think? Maybe it's that she is seeing things from a middle management perspective, and she's not getting to see things from like being able to lead people. And I think if she got to lead, I think she would kind of find her niche. It's the fact that she's kind of middle managing, going into meetings about picking the conference chairs. And I know that we got one piece of feedback that talks about that kind of stuff that doesn't matter, stuff that, endless debates about nothing. Because, I mean, what real difference is it, picking out what a conference chair is going to look like? Stuff like that. So I think that's what it is. I think that she's only seeing the middle management part and not the chance to lead. So, all right. I think that's it for Jeff's feedback this week. So thank you very much. And that is the only voicemail that we got. Let's move on to our next bit of feedback. And that is LT from NC. And he says, the show is getting better each week. I like the fact that the Merced had a Tellarite captain, which I think is another on-screen first, as much as they have hinted around it. So we got our 10D episode where we find out she wants to be liked. I was also enjoying the Mariner arc this week with the promotion, which brought up the conflict between her and Captain Freeman. The thing is, it makes me curious what started the conflict between the two of them. I would agree with that. I do want to know that. And I tend to think it's probably has to do with something I mentioned last week, her, kind of getting pushed up the chain of command, getting groomed for being captain because of the fact that her father is an admiral and her mother is a captain. She was pushed on the fast track and maybe it was too soon for her. Maybe she didn't have the level of maturity that she needed to get to that. And it's kind of created this brat. And I think that's what she is in a way. I think that she has the raw talent, but not the discipline. So that's what I think is going on. I think the conflict is that she was pushed into going into command and it was too soon and we got a slacker instead. And the captain is very frustrated with her daughter because what she thinks her daughter should be. And, I guess the father, the admiral as well, but it's frustrating for her knowing that she probably has the ability, how she's a slacker. I think she's just frustrated with her daughter. And likewise, and it was even mentioned this episode that she's getting pushed, and she said something like, that on my terms. Oh, well, yeah, Jeff mentioned it. On my terms. So that's the thing. Pushing her into command too soon wasn't on her terms. So that's probably what's going on. I had my reservations going into the idea of having a less serious Trek series, but I'm beginning to like it more as it goes on. The production crew are enjoying, they are Trek fans, they know their stuff, and they are poking fun at our long-standing Trek tropes in a way a true fan would. Like I said the first week, they are making the jokes that we make to ourselves when you watch any of the other series. I would agree in that very much. I think that's a good point.
Yeah, I think it's like that's initially I was very like, oh, I'm skeptical. And like, I'm like, I don't like, I kind of was like, I don't want this to be like a kind of like a not fun, but just making fun of thing of Trek. But like the more I watch it now, the more I'm like, okay, there's like a lot of really fun references. There's a lot of like, oh, I'm like Ransom fighting whoever like from last week. It was like, oh, clenched hands together, like
Oh, yeah.
like whatever. It's like we all seen that. Like so, it's like we get it. So I kind of agree that it's like whoever's the writers of the show, like they're doing their part into adding those kind of elements that like we can kind of appreciate it, but it also is kind of like we do have to step back to be like, it's a whole new way of looking at this, a no way to enjoy this, and it's not necessarily that this is Trek. It's just kind of like we're celebrating all this stuff. So I don't know, like you kind of have to take a step back and like not let your almost, I guess it would be not the great word to use, but your own ego to like step in the way and just enjoy it for what it is. Cause I've enjoyed it by just like not taking it seriously. And, you know, it's like, it sometimes at times it's like a little too fast for me, or like too much is going on at the time, you know, like on screen. But like, you know, like when I'll rewatch it, or like, you know, because I'm doing a podcast, I think it's like I'm kind of looking at it a little bit more and like listening to it more and not just letting it like just play in the background. I'm enjoying it a lot more because, you know, it's like it's funny and it's not too trying to take itself too seriously. And I think that's the part that I'm enjoying about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's the right level of comedy with reverence. So it reveres Star Trek. So it's making fun of without, I guess you could say making fun with versus making fun of. So it's just the things that it brings up. A lot of the stuff it's there for the fans, but it's not necessary. Like if it was necessary, then I think it would be a problem.
No. And that's my question though, too, is just like, how is this playing to an audience that are Trek fans or not Trek fans who also are not podcasters and like, you know, like and do what we do? Because I'm like, we will pay attention or like rewatch and like, you know, kind of like take more notice to just someone that's just, I'm just a regular just person that's just watching this. And it's like, that's my question is like, is this playing off the way that they want or the way it should? Or is it doing something else because, you know, we're doing what we do? And to me, I'm like, that's, you know, like we kind of have a little bit of a bias in that sense. And it's just like, I would not know what to expect if I was watching this and like literally not doing a podcast, not even like whatever, like, you know, interaction I had with Star Trek and this and that. I'm curious of how this is playing off to the general populace.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I know that. How come I can't find this? Star Trek Lower Decks rate. Okay, I'll just try Lower Decks.
Oh, you're trying to find the ratings.
There was something about them.
The only thing I saw was like something on Twitter saying like, "Oh, everybody loves Lower Decks," and I just
there's something.
It was a promotion.
There was something mentioned, and I can't find it.
All right. Our next feedback comes from Aaron from Akron. He says, "I genuinely giggled when they discussed new chairs. I was in that meeting. It's the absolute worst."
I've been in a similar meeting, so I can understand that.
Yeah, I thought it was just funny. It's like, that's what senior staff talks about.
Yeah.
And then Edwin from Arizona, he said, "Great episode, good story, good pacing, and very funny."
Yeah, I agree. Well, I didn't find it as great, but there were things about it that were good. I liked that the mother and daughter kind of had a working together well moment. Finally, it's just some of it I didn't like.
Yeah.
As now, and we have to come up with some music for this. I haven't figured out what to play here, but the spot the references section. First thing was obviously, I think, mentioned by Rutherford. He mentioned Q or the Traveler
Mhm.
when they were referring to O'Connor ascending, I guess, being a pure energy or something. And the whole thing about being able to see the universe balanced on the back of a koala. I was trying to figure out what that was a reference to. Do you have any idea what that would be a reference to?
No, and that's like that was the thing. It was like I know we've had kind of like obviously the Q or the Traveler
Yeah.
from Next Generation that it's like, oh, they're all knowing, seeing, and I kind of like thought a little bit. It's like, oh, this is kind of like a Kess kind of storyline.
Yeah.
You know, like just being able to like, oh, I'm transforming into something, and then I can see like all this amazing like thing that you guys can't see.
Yeah.
So,
The only thing I could find, because I did look for this, there's a t-shirt that you can find on Amazon, which is called the Universe 3 Moons Koala Random Galaxy Stars t-shirt. And I guess I will post a link to it.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure who made this up, but it is a picture of 3 koalas and a moon and several planets and obviously galaxies and the universe. So, and it looks like Earth. So I don't know if it had something to do with that or it was some other thing. But when I did a search for it to try to figure out what the heck they were talking about, that's the only thing I found. So there was a mention of Abraham Lincoln, and I believe that has to do, it was an honor to the strange thing that we saw in the episode, The Savage Curtain of TOS. That was also, we saw briefly in the short trek Ephraim and Dot. So we see a massive, huge Abraham Lincoln. I believe that was a mention. And him transcending or whatever into a non-corporeal form that is similar, I mentioned, to Transfigurations. I mentioned that already.
Yeah.
Generational ship was in an episode of Voyager called Elogium, in Enterprise E2, in TOS by any other name. And there was also an episode of the Orville that had a generational ship. And I didn't get the name of that episode, but for those of you that are into the Orville, that was a season 1 episode. So,
yeah, no, and it's like, and I know, so like I like was looking that up, and it was like there's a lot of like little other like kind of like not side episodes that like kind of like referenced into a generational ship that ended up being like into like, because I think in the original series there was another episode that happened before by any other name that kind of like then basically went into this whole thing. But I don't know. It's just, you know, it's just kind of like, there's your connection.
Right.
There's
yeah. Yeah. All right. So, and we also mentioned the sensors already. So. All right, Kyle, what do you have for other notes?
You already kind of mentioned it, and I was kind of picky about the damage that the terraforming fluid stuff did to the ship, and it was kind of like, they seem to be able to solve that really like perfectly.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like I thought I saw like these big, huge like spike for, you know, the rocks like bursting through, you know, like holes and all that stuff, that it's like, oh, I guess it somehow was not enough damage to basically destroy the ship.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever. That's what it was. I thought it was just funny as like the worst job was like scraping carbon. Boiler was like scraping carbon off an already slightly harder carbon. He's like, that's Klingon prison stuff. Like, again, some of this is just kind of like the last part that I kind of was like adding to this. I thought was kind of interesting was like one of the worst things you could do was like, you know, cleaning the holodeck buffer.
Yeah.
You know, it was like, and then Ransom was like basically was saying it's like, he was like, yeah, I have her emptying the bleep out of our holodeck bleep filter.
Yeah.
Which we know that's like, I guess is shit. But and then the captain's like, people really use it for that. And he was like, oh yeah, it's mostly that. Yeah. And it just made me think about like, well, yeah, obviously it's like Quirk and his whole suites. I'm like, obviously, what do they use those for?
Yeah.
Like, so it's like, obviously there is a system to, even though it's force fields and like, like whatever. Yes, there's obviously a actual real physical waste that you have to deal with.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And someone's job is to basically extract that and get rid of it.
Yes. Yeah. I had this down in my notes too. I was thinking like, what kind of stuff is, I don't even want to think about what's in there. And of course, that's what we're probably led to believe, that it's just all this kind of nastiness.
Yeah. And that would be the worst job that you would want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
Yeah. And the last was just basically the whole mother-daughter connection between Captain Freeman and Mariner. I mean, it was good to see their relationship kind of like improve now after them working together, because the only thing that we got out of all this was at the beginning was just like, oh, there's an admiral and there's a captain that don't like her. Oh, we find out she's a daughter, but they're just like, we want to get rid of her. And then we get this kind of like really touching moment that's just like, oh, hey, it's like, we're actually like, we don't like dislike each other. And it's like, we can work together. And now they're almost kind of like, hey, we're going to, figure things out and move forward. And, it's like,
until she acts like a jerk in front of the admiral.
Right. But even then, at the very end, it was like, I still feel like their relationship has changed so much that it's like, she no longer like just doesn't like her daughter and not treating her as being like, oh, you're just a subordinate.
Yeah.
I think that like whatever their situation was before, that's what I'm getting where they're going with the show. If they show up next episode, that is just like, she's just like, oh, I want to get rid of her. You're just horrible. Blah, blah. Then I'll be like, oh, wow, that just totally disconnect.
Well, and if it does, then that pretty much shows that this is an episodic show only.
Right.
And that there's no real connection from episode to episode. So,
right. That'll be very interesting to see.
Yeah. The Merced is much like the Cerritos, referring to a city in California, the county seat of Merced County. And it's also, of course, a California class vessel. And it is NCC 87075. And I don't see any 47s in there other than 87 minus 40. But there's nothing to say 40 in there. I was looking for an example somewhere, and the only thing I can think of, and I couldn't find it directly referenced anywhere, would have been something in Deep Space Nine, probably due to Quark or the Ferengi, but like I want to say something like Rom and Quark, but I couldn't find the exact example. But the whole idea of like Ransom giving the suggestion and Freeman not really paying attention to what Ransom's suggestion is, and then 5 seconds later gives the exact same suggestion, and Ransom, gives her the credit for it.
Yeah.
But of course, like that kind of thing we've seen, that's a very common TV trope. I know I never really watched the show, but The Office, that was one that did it. I couldn't find a specific episode that referenced it, but I believe Deep Space Nine did at some point. Anyway, that idea. And the rest of the stuff we'd already mentioned. So I think at this point, we will move on to our shipwide announcements. About this episode, a lot of the actors, like, for example, the actor that played the Admiral, I said it sounded like Kelsey Grammer. We don't know. The Captain Durango, that wasn't credited either. So again, we don't know who played it, but we do know that the character of Lieutenant O'Connor was voiced by Haley Joel Osment. And if you don't know that name, that is, of course, the kid from
I See Dead People.
I See Dead People. Yeah. And he's been in, quite a bit of stuff over the years. But I know recently he was in Silicon Valley, So I've seen him in various things, but Silicon Valley was the one I remember most recently. The news items, most of these were collected by Wes Huntington. So again, thanks to you, Wes. Most importantly, I think, CBS announces to promote season 3 of Discovery. They will be airing season 1 on Thursday nights on the CBS network at 10 p.m., 9 Central, as part of a special presentation starting on September 24th, which is actually the anniversary of 3 years ago Star Trek Discovery aired on CBS, actually, the first episode. So I don't know if that was just coincidence or what, but yeah, so they are playing it and they are offering it as part of a way to promote, which makes perfect sense to me. I think what they would be smart to do would be to play the first few episodes of Discovery, as many, like, get to the part where Discovery season 1 is good. Because I've said it on the podcast, even the last Patreon, I said that, the first several episodes of Discovery aren't as good as the rest of them. It starts with, I think, episode 6. The show starts getting really good and goes on, and 6 to 13 are solid. Episode 8, a lot of people loved it. I didn't love that one as much. That's the only one that's not quite up there. But 6 through 13 are outstanding. And 3, 4, 5 are better than 1 and 2. But starting with 1 and 2 and only giving 1, I don't know. That might backfire. But like I say, if they played episode 1 and 2 on a Monday and then played episodes 3, 4, 5, and 6, Thursday, Friday, or Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and for a week, like, just show them at 10 p.m. the rest of the week, that would probably be a good idea. But basically, I think the main reason there was some speculation on this, like, why are they doing this? It should be pretty clear why they're doing this. Yes, they're pushing this to promote Discovery season 3, but they're hurting for content. I mean, the networks, the shows haven't gone back, like, especially on network TV. I think the networks are most hit by this. So they're hurting for content. They've got to go back and pull out shows that they never, intended to show. They may pull out, say, the first season of Twilight Zone 2 or, some other programs on CBS All Access. They're hurting for content. So it makes perfect sense. And why not show it just prior to Discovery and keep showing it? And then during the episodes, push the heck out of CBS All Access and say, if you really like this episode, you could watch the whole season on CBS All Access right now and get season 2. And starting, next week, we'll have season 3. And, they'll probably offer it in combination with a month free trial or something like that to make it worthwhile. So again, it makes perfect sense. I think it's fantastic. It may mean we'll get some additional fans of the show. I'm hoping we do. Maybe some of them will actually turn to a podcast to get up on this, which will be kind of funny, because if they go through Discovery or our podcast, it started off with Adam and me doing the first 10 or 11 episodes, whatever it is, for the start of the show. And then Ruthie came in. And now, for the Lower Deck stuff, it's you. It's kind of funny. But yes, just a reminder, Ruthie, we will be back when it's Discovery again. I always say that. But our next bit of news is Emily Coots. I think that's how you're saying your name. Coates or Coots. Kayla Detmer is announced that she's getting married. This was announced on August 25th with the message, marrying a real-life mermaid. Her future spouse's name is Lexi Altman, director for a media company. And I don't know, it's funny. I thought that they had announced this already, because I thought I had seen this somewhere that they were engaged, but it seems to be more announced now.
Mhm.
But, good for them. Some Section 31 show news now. Alex Kurtzman says the show writers are developing a very surprising Star Trek show. That's interesting. I wonder where that's going to go. The thought that I had on that would have been Star Trek meets Mission Impossible or something like that. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it's going to be that. Maybe it's going to be something else. Maybe Section 31 will only be one part of it. Who knows? But we'll see. And of course, that one, I know one of the big stumbling blocks with that has been the availability of Michelle Yeoh and when she would be available to do it. She's, of course, going to be, I think, pretty much in all of season 3 of Discovery. I'm very curious to see if she's still a special guest star versus, full cast this time. We'll see. But anyway, good to see that that's going. We know that also, and it's not here actually, so I'll mention it now. There is some news from certain trade websites in Toronto about Star Trek Discovery Season 4 and Strange New World Season 1. And it seems like production of those shows may go on pretty much in parallel. So I imagine they'll probably do the CBS. There's a new CBS studio in Toronto. They'll probably do them there, and then they'll probably continue using the studio that they've been using in Toronto. I can't think of the name of it. Pine. Anyway, doesn't matter. They'll still shoot Discovery where they do now. So that wasn't part of our news, but I just thought of it. A new composer for a new Trek show. Alex Kurtzman also said that Naomi Melumad, I don't know how to say that, and she scored one of the short Treks, Q&A, says they picked her to score a new Trek show. So it is possible that she will be scoring Prodigy, the new Nickelodeon show. I mean, it's possible it could be that. It could be Strange New Worlds as well, for that matter. We'll see.
Mm-hmm.
Chris Pine says, despite walking away from Star Trek 4 in 2018, he recently said that he would be ready to play Kirk again. He also made mention of the fact that there may be a Star Trek Discovery movie. Interesting.
Yep.
I wonder if that means that he would play Kirk on Discovery. And for that, I have to play...
It's a trap! If I had any money, I'd be sipping jippers on a beach somewhere.
Jippers on a beach. Great episode.
Yeah. So the last bit of news that I also inserted in here was something I heard on, I believe it was on Daily Star Trek News, that Star Trek Fleet Command, which is a mobile game that's available on iOS and Android, that is a very profitable game, actually. It's made like $250 million or something like that. That has been, up until now, a Kelvin Timeline only game. So all the ships and all that have been Kelvin Timeline only. Well, they have announced that they are bringing in ships and all of that from all of Star Trek. So it won't just be from the Kelvin Timeline. So that's good. And I played it a couple of times. I didn't find it all that great to play on my Android phone. It was better on my iPad, but I know it's very popular, and there are people that play like that game every single day. So, well, anyway, that's it. So, Kyle, why don't you tell people how to contact us?
All right. Well, to submit your feedback or connect with us, you can go to talktothemedia.com/feedback, where you can submit text or audio. You can also call 216-232-6146. You can email us at lowerdecks@talkthroughmedia.com or post in our designated episode thread in our Facebook group. And you can find that at facebook.com/group/Star Trek TTM podcasts. The deadline for season 1, episode 5 will be on a regular day and time. That's Friday, September 4th at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central. You can find us on Twitter at Star Trek TTM. A great way you can support us is to share us on Twitter and Facebook. And also our network page is at facebook.com/talkthroughmedia. And you can write a review there. So share us on Facebook and retweet us on Twitter, especially when you post that the new episode is out. You can subscribe to us in Apple Podcasts on the podcast client of choice. And while you're there, give us a rating or review.
Yeah, we know you notice we changed that a little bit. So we kind of did that on the fly. But and of course, another way you can support us is by supporting us on Patreon. For as little as $1 per month, you can get access to extra content. And as we've been saying, we've been releasing those episodes to the general feed, but that may stop at this point because we have regular content going right now. So we'll see. I think a lot of it will depend upon how good that next Patreon episode is. So, but we would like to thank our Patreon supporters: Clint McCollum, Lawrence Todd, James Robbins, Fred Petrie, that guy over there, Kyle McAdams, Kim Vogley, Brian Shiro, Christoph Lechtleitner, Lee Radke, Aaron Mays, Michael Carrier, Stephen Chambers, Kevin Lyle, and Jeff Gentry. And if you listen to us, we always say this every week, but if you listen to us on the Star Trek Picard cast feed, you have, of course, been getting Picard, and now you're getting Lower Decks. If you plan to watch Star Trek Discovery when it comes back in a few weeks' time, actually, it's not that long. October 15th is when the episodes begin. You should change over to the Star Trek Discovery podcast feed. So that's also part of talkthroughmedia.com, but just do a search on your podcast client of choice and you'll find us there. So that when it comes back, that will have episodes of the Star Trek Discovery podcast, the Star Trek Picard cast, and the Star Trek Lower Decks podcast. At some point, we may change the name of that, but that's how you know it for now. Yeah. And everything that you can get from Talk Through Media can be found on the Talk Through Media all-inclusive feed, which in addition to those 3 podcasts I just mentioned, it also has Rebinged Deep Space Nine, the Walking Dead Talk Through, and Let's Talk Through. And stay tuned for that promised episode of the Walking Dead Talk Through. Again, we've been busy. We might try to fit it in, next little bit. But
I think we'll fit it in when it gets closer. But like I feel like that we're kind of headed to everything is starting in basically October.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think there's going to be like Discovery, Walking Dead, Fear, like the World Beyond, the whole pandemic. Basically, it's like it pushed it all. It's like, hey, let's just all start in October. And I think we're going to have a kind of like a interesting trying to figure this out. But
yeah, that's my take as well. It seems like, I know October 4th is when the World Beyond premiere and the original season finale of The Walking Dead are airing. And then the following week, October 11th, is the premiere of season 6 of Fear the Walking Dead. I don't think the rest of the episodes of The Walking Dead will be returning then. I know supposedly there's another 6 that they're doing. And I don't know if it's 6. I think it's 6. I originally thought it was 10, but anyway, my point being is they're adding on to season 10. Mm-hmm. And I believe we're going to get World Beyond and Fear that will be airing the same night or something like that. So that'll be, I don't know how we're going to do that, but we'll figure it out. But anyway, that's The Walking Dead, not Star Trek. So the next episode of this show, Star Trek Lower Decks will be Season 1, Episode 5. It is titled, we don't know, to be determined, I guess. And I checked Memory Alpha and some other Wikipedia, and there's nothing been announced yet. So we don't know the name of it. We don't know who's written it or directed it or a description. But until next week, I'm Brian.
And I'm Kyle.
Peace and long life.
Live long and prosper.